Hello there, and welcome to my channel. I'm Chase Moser, and today I'm finally going to be going over the long-anticipated Scream 5. If you don't already know, I'm a huge Scream fan. Ghostface has been my favorite thing ever since I was young. It was pretty much that and Jurassic Park and Star Wars. I loved all those things. It's like really defined me as a child. This was the sequel that I'd always wanted and waited for. I can't believe how good it is, and I can't believe that it took another 11 years between Screams 4 and this one. It was really crazy. It was something I had been manifesting my whole life, and after Wes passed, I still even had faith and hope and dreamed that this would be a thing. This is pretty much the exact movie that I have always wanted or ever wished for. I did think that it would be cool if ever Jill returned, but that is just a fun little thing that honestly sometimes doesn't even make sense. That's just something I like. So I think it's perfect, I think it's fresh, I think it's masterful and fun. It was exactly what the franchise needed to be, and every installment is different and it feels like its own single story. And so if it was too much of a Scream 5 that was related to Scream 4, I see how that might not have worked out well or might not have done well. But I think this is a great handing off point, a great starting of the franchise for the new characters, a passing the torch, a great intro to the legacy characters. It's 25 years later and they got the original trio back for one final film, and I cannot believe that that happened. So with all of that being said, let's get into obviously one of my favorite sequels, and I loved it very, very fast, Scream 5 of 2022. Now, the reason it's taken me so long to do this review is because I have spent the entire, pretty much, adult and teenage life, and even early teen life and like adolescent childhood watching Scream and understanding those movies. But then the fourth one came around in 2011, and it's been 11 years since then. So I've gotten to have that and hold that for over a decade and really be familiar with it. That was the franchise for me, and it was so solid. So breaking into this new mold, it definitely caught my attention, and it was really interesting. I loved being able to see the differences and the similarities. This is definitely a love letter, and I love that it's what is considered a requel. I also love that it's pretty much just a direct sequel to number 4 and all of the other movies. And you can still watch it as a direct sequel to the original one. I love these opening titles. I pretty much say that history repeats itself, or there's a lot of parallels into this universe. It's the 25th anniversary of the original Woodsboro killing sprees, and I really love the idea of taking it back here again, carrying over the old characters from 4 and then introducing the new ones in this. And Jenna Ortega is amazing. She's the first person to survive an opening attack. And that was one of the most insane parts. I remember watching that in the theater and absolutely crying because of how painful it is. And Ghostface was back and he was scary, and seeing that on the big screen again was so menacing, and I just remember how it felt and the music and everything, and I've been watching it ever since. And I really wanted to soak this movie in. That's why it's been a year, and a lot of people I know will watch this 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 10, hey, 20 or 50 times. I literally watched it almost every single day for the longest time, and then 2 or 3 times a week, you know, sometimes twice in the same day. That's just what it was whenever I was younger. I didn't have a lot on, you know, media, physical media, and so I would just rewatch the same movies over again. That provides a comforting feeling. So especially when something new comes out, I have to digest it because I don't know as much about it as I do the other ones. I have to pick up the new things every single time. I love this new group of teenagers. I think it's everything that it needs to be. They're smart, they're fun, they're interesting. It feels like the original cast. It feels like Woodsboro, and I love the school. It really feels like the, you know, the high school is there. It does have a little bit of like, it's kind of like the essence of it. I wish we would have maybe been in the halls of the high school a little bit more. That would have been so cool. But I'm still very happy with what we got, and I love the girl with pink hair, Liv. She was easily one of my favorites so quickly. A lot of people hated her. I didn't understand why. But then, you know, to have this, you know, situation happen so that Sam and Tara can be reunited, that is introducing us to these new characters. They are sisters, and they're pretty much taking the Sydney role for this franchise to go on forward now. And you realize there's all of these secrets, and when you come to find out that Sam is the long-lost child of Billy Loomis, it's mind-blowing and crazy because we always kind of speculated or wondered if that would be a thing or if it ever happened. But we always kind of thought it would be his son, I think, and that he would be the killer, not the new main character. So it was just really brilliant, and I just thought it was so interesting to go back and refresh the franchise that way and do something that was kind of cliche but flip it on its head. Because Scream was always self-aware and doing things that people are talking about. I think it was a perfect installment into this, you know, set of movies. It moved along so naturally to me, and the events occurred, you know, seamlessly. It feels like this is how the world that we were living in would flow. It feels like I would really find these characters here, and it feels like they would really happen like this. And that's why I want to back up my thing by saying I literally watched it so many times this past year and 2 or 3 months, because I wanted to have it completely understood, and I wanted to talk about it like how I talk about the first Scream and the fourth and the third, and now I've got that familiarity. I have memorized this film, and I challenge someone else to put that work in, and it's not because I wanted to have that power over anyone, but it's because I needed it for myself. I need to know this. I wanted to love it. I wanted to have everything about it understood, and I do. And it's crazy. I've always thought about how cool would be to go back to the original house from the first movie. I think that one of my favorite kills is how they get Vince at the bar, because it was so quick and menacing, and I love the use of Red Right Hand. Also, how it's raining. That's the first time that there's like a raining scene in, like Ghostface history for Scream. And it was just so perfect. And I actually showed this to my grandpa. He took me to see the fourth one in theaters all those years ago. And he kind of like went, oh, geez, man, he knows what he's doing. He didn't want that guy around too long because he just, bam, And that's so true. It really says a lot about, he didn't want to put up a fight or anything like that. Like, it was so scary because he just knew how to take this guy down. It's like, bam, done, you're out. And that's what is so menacing. All of these attacks do feel different, and the pacing is different and is so violent. And so it definitely brings about the resurrection and recruitment of bringing these characters out of the past and out of hiding. Well, not necessarily hiding, but there's Dewey, and he, falls into this because Sam knocks at his door and pretty much begs for help. And that's one of the greatest scenes, is where we get him breaking down the rules of a franchise. He quickly points out who it is and sends them on their way. And he calls Sydney to let her know what was going on. And I had wanted that. I had wanted to make sure that I had seen Sydney early off in the film, and not that she was just, saved in for the last moment. And to see her and meet her after all those years, I'd picture what she would be like after Joe Roberts. And to see her after 10 or 11 years, it was everything again. And she's so beautiful and healthy and perfect, and it gets me every time. And I know that there's that time gap, and that is her after those events. And I'd always pictured and I'd always wondered, but to have the confirmation and to know that it was real, and to tell everyone that I knew something was going to happen, and to have it feel real and have it come out, I feel so vindicated. It made me not a liar. This movie made me feel true. It made me feel like I was right, because I had been telling everyone for so long that it would happen. So I just have a lot of love for it. There's nothing I probably would change, other than, I understand that they made this a lot during COVID and they didn't have the biggest budget. Scream 4 had a $50 million budget, as to where this one had a $25 million budget. So there's just, sometimes the camera angles or the chase scenes are a little tighter or cut down a little shorter. It's not as heightened as it could be, because they were trying to make sure that they could do the best movie with what they had. And it's probably one of my favorite sequels, if not my favorite sequel. I've been struggling with that, because 4 had been my entire life and is my entire life, if you can't see the poster behind me right there. So it's just perfect that I have a 15-year anniversary movie and a 25-year anniversary movie, and I almost don't want to pick between the two. And when I do my rankings, I literally feel like, it's not that I want to dethrone Scream 4, but I feel like Scream 5 deserves to be second in this franchise. It was just so perfect, and I love the Gale and Dewey reuniting scene. It's very Scream 2. I love all of the nods to the other parts of the franchise, and how, Wes and his mother, Judy, that was such an emotional scene, because we'd known Judy from 4, so you've got that tie, and she's a legacy character. And that was one of the scariest moments. And, Wes's death scene was brutal as well, and I love the way that the blood splatters on the mask, and the way that his head moves and everything. It's definitely one of my favorite Ghostface performances, and masks, and voice, and the things he says of all time. This is also the first time that we get Ghostface on a phone call, where you actually see him doing the other end of it, and he's got the voice changer and he's using the phone, and it's crazy. It's definitely one of my favorite scenes of the franchise, and I don't think that Dewey dying makes this film bad or anything like that. I think it was time. I think it was necessary. I always thought that Dewey was supposed to die in 1 and 2, and so I always thought they were going to kill him in 4, or Gale. I kind of thought they were going to do that in 4 as well. So it was time for it, and it really needed it. It made it strong for me, and it was real, and it was likely, and it was believable, and it's one of my favorite scenes, and it was so empowering, or no, not empowering. it was so powerful and just heart-wrenching, and it was so well directed because you think that he's going to prevail at first, and then there's this back and forth, and I just remember watching that in the theaters. It was one of the most intense scenes that I was anticipating or didn't know what was going to happen, and they actually really led me to believe that he was going to live for a moment, and I was like, wow, man, I really got it wrong. And then I was happy that I was wrong, and then now I'm in this new safe spot that's not real, and they take it away from me, and they do it in such a way where you think maybe, and then they really just finish him off, and it's one of the coolest Ghostface kills. He used 2 knives for the first time ever, and he kicks him down, and it's brutal, and it makes me love the character even more, and it was a great sacrifice. And he gets to be with Tatum again, and he saved the Carpenter sisters from having to go through what he went through, and it was really sad to see Gail's reaction. So just one of my favorite scenes is having that whole scene play out, and then Gail slow motion crying. It was everything, and it just, like I said, the pace of this movie is so well. I've watched it so many times. It's just really easy for me to throw on and pay attention to, or put on as a background movie, or put on as I'm cleaning, or just relaxing around the house. There's so many different ways for me to enjoy this film, and I have done it all of the different ways. And this is one of those scenes that always captures my attention. Not to mention, I do think it's the only reason that Sydney would come back. I don't think that she would necessarily care about or want to show up to track these things down unless it directly affected her, because why would she put herself in danger like that? But clearly, this has gone on too far, and it hit too close to home, and it was a really big point, and Gail needed her help, and it was just the only way to get her back there. And seeing them at Stu's house from the original movie was one of the scariest and craziest and bone-chilling things I'd ever thought about. I'd been dreaming about that my whole life, wondered what it would be like if Sydney ever got to go back, and so that's why I loved Scream 3 so much, is because I want to see that. And I've said that revisiting traumatic scenes or revisiting traumatic places is one of my favorite things that a character can go through, because it's also one of my favorite things that a person can go through in life. And so it was just haunting and scary and chilling and cold, and I feel like I could feel the wind blowing. And there's a certain mood that the first Scream movie has, an atmosphere, a certain moisture in the air, a certain wind blow within the trees, or just a whistling by the window, a coldness in the air to it. And I feel that same feeling here in Scream 5, especially when they show up, and just like the trees in the background. And before that Chad scene where it comes out of Stu's shed, that's one of the greatest moments ever, because it was the closest thing we have to a chase scene, and he really gets yanked there, and it was so cool to see more of Stu's house. And I've got sheds like that at my house in Ohio, and it really just tied to the world and the lore and the background, and we get to know about the layout of Stu's house, or I guess I should say Amber's house now. And I just thought it was so brilliant bringing them in that way and introducing it this way. Sydney and Gail showing up to face them in the showdown is very Scream 2 and Scream. Honestly, it's all of them. Sydney and Gail have always been at the finale, and this newest one, Scream 6, was the first time where they weren't. But I'm okay with that, because this 5th one really feels like a cap to the number 5. Like, it feels like a true sequel to where if they were the main characters and they were going to stay and do something after this, it totally works that way. But if this is their end, or if this is, if it never did anything past year, like, it's so perfect. And so you don't mind the change up there, but it is really cool that so far up to this point, it's always been Gail and Sydney, and to see their relationship evolve was so perfect. I even love when they're in the car on the way driving to Stu's house, and they don't know it yet, but they find out, and it's so chilling and crazy, because Sydney would never ever want to go back there. I just know it. Nobody would. And I can't imagine what she was feeling like. I actually can. There was a moment whenever I had to go rescue one of my friends, because there was this really violent guy doing something really, really horrible, and I hopped in the car and I couldn't even drive. I had to make my person drive for me. And that's what was going on for Sydney. I could imagine she was so shook up that her adrenaline was pumping. You can't sit still. You can't do anything. It's so horrible. You're about to fight for your life. And I remember having to fight for my life that night. And I protected my friend, and it was awesome. And I got her out of that situation. It was perfect. And you should always show up for your friends like that. And that's what Scream is. It's heightened reality about domestic abuse, because this is people. And the biggest thing you can do in crime world is Passions of Crime. Like, look that up. It's literally everything, like on Netflix or anything like that. It was because someone did something or whatever. There's always those motives in the plots, and it always falls perfect into Scream. So yeah, I loved it, and that's why Scream 3 was so cool, is because it was the set, and she got to go through all of that trauma, especially whenever she was at a traumatized state, and you get to see her at 2 different points. One where she's not really at the house, so she feels that she's kind of safe enough to experiences things and she sees Tatum's, whatever. But now she's at the real house where the real people died, and she's able to handle it better because I think of the experience she had in Scream 3. But it's also just different because she's a woman now, and she's not in the traumatized place that she was back then, and she has the kids. But I know that she was feeling everything like that, and it must have been haunting. And to see everything look the same but different, and to have the fight there again, and it means business. And I love how whenever she first steps into the house, it like the camera angle zooms in and it almost like swallows her, and you can almost feel like the presence of Billy and Stu in there, like not letting her go. They're like, "You're in the house now, Sydney. Like, we've got you." And I know that sounds weird or whatnot, but like I just would like in my little heart, I believe that there's so much trauma there that like there's almost like a spiritual feeling. I'm not saying it's like a ghost movie or they weren't hinting at it. I just like in my little mind, it would be cool to think that it's like literally Billy and Stu just like right there. Hello, Sydney. In 25 years, in the essence of us, this is where we died, and you're back here facing it all again. History repeating itself. And Sydney getting this call was awesome. I'm really glad that she got a call in this movie. That was so important to me. And it's my favorite way they ever say hello, Sydney, in the franchise, because the way they go up with it. I thought the motive was surprising. I was really heavily guessing Amber, but I never really guessed Richie. And so it was crazy. For a moment there, I thought there was going to be 3 Ghostface, but it ends up just being 2. It was clever editing and a mask reveal. And it was really cool that both Ghostface reveal themselves without taking off a mask for the first time, but then whenever there is the one in costume, you think it might be a third one or another one, but you take it off and realize it's Amber. So you pretty much get everything. You get an unmasking, but you also get all of the reveals in the surprising ways, like how she did with the gun, which is by far one of the craziest moments I've ever been with people in the theater. Like, it was so fun. That was one of my favorite moments. Everybody was shook. I thought it was so real and fresh, especially watching this commentary. It was crazy sitting there in the theaters. It really felt so meta. It almost, I understand by being not too hard to catch on to, but it's like it literally felt like they were talking to me. It was so aware of itself. It was crazy. Like, I was like, is everyone else catching this? Like, I feel like they're calling, I feel like not calling me out, but they're calling people out. Like, they're calling everyone out right now. And it almost felt new nightmarish trying to face this in real life, but it's like it's Sydney and Gail facing it in real. It's this really cool thing. I love it. In the kitchen, down to the tea, everything was redesigned perfectly. It was one of my favorite scenes ever, and I always knew that Sydney was going to survive. I was nervous for Dewey, I was nervous for Gail, but I always knew Sydney would survive, and I'm really happy because she is the best, and that ending shot is definitely one of my favorites. It gives me chills. I almost love it more than the original because it has a great morning sunrise feeling, just like how the other one, but it's at a different part in the sunrise, so it's like still kind of dark, and it has like a pink sky. I really love that. But the original one is the original. It's got that Moby song. It's so perfect. And I love the ending credit song with this. Like, that pop song was awesome. And I just loved how they treated Sydney and everything. It was such a respectful thing. I'm completely proud of it, completely in support of it and defense of it. I am so proud of this movie. They did me justice. They did this justice. I am completely satisfied, and I would never take it back. So that is my review of Scream 5. I hope you liked my thoughts. It's not everyone's movie, I get that, but I keep saying this is my world and everyone else lives in it, and I'm not trying to be weird whenever I say that or like selfish or anything, but I actually mean it as like an honest to God joy and gift. Like, everything I want when it comes to movies like just tends to happen. Like, I'm almost never mad at stories. They almost always play out how exactly I would like them to. And that is awesome for me. And I'm sad for people who don't, feel that way. And that's unfortunate, but I can't take that on too much because it's not my life. It's not my experience. I can't wait to go over Scream 6 at some point. It was so perfect. It was one of the best sequels I've ever seen in my life. I don't know where to place this one. I don't even know whether to place it, at the same rank as this or above this. Like, 5 and 6 are different in so many different ways. They're so good. I'm so happy with this new era of Scream. And, make sure to check out anything else that I do about this franchise because I'm definitely going to be diving into it more. Check out some of my other videos. I've done a bunch of different genres and I plan to do a bunch more. Check out my community tab because I'm always sharing fun things and doing little questions and polls and stuff, and that's sometimes the best way to interact with me. Also, I do live streams, so be sure to watch for some of those, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.